Here we go. What's up, everybody? My name is Daniel Unmanageable, and this is Hard Knox Talks. First of all, I would like to thank my sponsor, Prairie Sky Recovery Center in Wilkie. Thank you so much. And I would also like to mention that this episode is brought to you in part by Chrism Prairie Nodes. Tonight's guest, Mario Ahenakew, has had quite a life. From gangster to jail time to starting his own legitimate business to dating a lawyer. Like, what the... Anyways, we're gonna meet him right after this. Oh no, the lawyer's watching. Oh, they can hear me still.
I spent 23 years living in addiction. 16 of those years I worked as a Red Seal tradesperson in Saskatchewan and Northern Alberta. During that time, I made many mistakes and took more than a few hard knocks. I went from tradesman to business owner to hiding from gang members and dumpster diving. But with that lived experience, I've decided to try and make a change. I've dedicated my life to raising awareness and promoting change in the fields of substance use and psychological health and safety. So join me and my guests as we take off the blinders around mental health in our communities and at work and shine a light on what's working and what's not working in the fields of mental health and occupational health and safety. I'm Daniel Unmanageable, and I'll be your host, and this is Hard Knox Talks.
It's like you need a cigarette after that drop, hey? Okay. Where's Mario? Hang on here. Brand new streaming platform tonight. I'm learning how to use it. Where is he? There he is. What's up, Mario? Oh, hang on.
Brother.
Hang on. There, now talk.
Oh, how's it going there, brother?
It's going well. How are you doing, man? You feeling good tonight?
Yeah, I'm feeling great, actually. I do feel like I might need a cigarette, but I mean, like, I can handle through it. I've been through worse things in life, you know?
Yeah, that build up there towards the end when it's like, are you ready? I love it.
It was suspenseful, that's for sure.
Yeah. Before we go into the flashback, I have to ask you probably the most important question that I'm going to ask you all night tonight. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
When you met your girlfriend, the lawyer, were you in handcuffs?
No, I was not. No. So she was involved with corporate law. So yeah.
Oh.
But I also didn't meet her with the business, you know what I mean?
Okay.
Like, yeah.
You ready for the flash?
Yeah, I'm ready. Let's get it.
Finish your thought, bro. We got all night.
All right. So I actually met her on Instagram.
Really?
Yeah, man. Mario the Roof on Instagram, we're popping on there, you know?
Fair enough. Let's go to the flashback. Okay. So, Mario, why don't you tell us about what it was like growing up?
I guess growing up, I guess when you talk about growing up, you start at the beginning. So my mom was she was 18 years old when she had me. And at that point in her life, she wasn't able to take care of me. And she was actually going to give me up to adoption when my great grandparents had actually stepped in and said that they were going to raise me. So they basically took me in as one of their own, them including like a great aunt, like another grandmother. And they raised me on their own, like in my reserve.
What Nation. I was just gonna ask you what reserve.
Yeah, Ahenakew Cree Nation.
Yeah.
So I grew up in the res.
So what was it like? Oh, and so Scott, I see you commenting in the chat there, wondering how people can comment on screen. There's a little bit of a confusion here. We're having trouble getting all the comments up on screen. I'm seeing that YouTube isn't even showing up on screen. I'm sorry, Scott, but whatever you got to comment, buddy, I'll make sure to read it out and do my best to answer your questions. So, getting back to Mario, how was it like growing up with your grandparents?
You know, it was good. Like they taught me a lot of things in life, especially like hard work was definitely one, and commitment was another one.
That stuck,
Like
didn't
to
it?
yeah, to have something in life where that you really want, you got to commit to it and work hard.
Yeah. And you were talking about opportunities when we spoke before that your grandparents had afforded you. What kind of opportunities did they give you?
Yeah, so like opportunities, I guess living with them, we were in like almost just above middle class, not even middle class, like just above the poverty line, to be
Mhm.
honest with you. Like one vehicle household, like they were already older and almost retired. My great grandfather, he was a welder and he was a farmer.
Sounds like a cool
And
guy.
yeah, and yeah, welder. You too. Oh, you're all right. Anyway, with that being said, my great grandmother was also a librarian at the school, so I was able to, get to and from school every day, which was a big opportunity, especially living in the reserve.
Yeah, no kidding. What were your relationships like in school?
You know what? For the most part, it was almost like there was just a group of us, like just like I wasn't even really out there, but there was like four or five, like just a main like clique of us that would always kind of like hang out together.
Hmm. And what was it like?
Like it was pretty good for the most part. Like I had some troubles in school at an earlier age too with like bullying and stuff like that because I was a little bit of like a heavy, like a bigger kid, right?
So you were the bully?
No, I was getting bullied in school.
Really?
Yeah, I know. Who would have
Did,
thought?
did not see that coming.
Yeah, nobody really bullies me anymore, you know? 6'6",
Yeah.
let's go.
All I know about you is you give fantastic hugs. Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just like you just feel so safe.
Yeah, exactly.
So when did things started going sideways for you?
So I would think that things started to almost go sideways the older I got and the more I didn't realize, which path I wanted to take. And I didn't have that guidance towards my age like somebody has like younger parents, right? Like my great grandparents that were looking after me were like, in their 70s already. So I didn't have that established relationship to, have a family to go out and to do things and, to have these different opportunities or anything like that. So I wanted like a friend group and almost like a family sense that were more committed to being my age. And, another thing with me is we already talked about it before was that I had a job and I'd always been working from a young age, right?
How old were
Because
you when you started working?
well, when I grew up on a farm, I was, like 10, 11, already starting to, do stuff on like the swather or the combine or whatever. But then I got a job at a gas station when I was, 12, 13 years old. Like as soon as I could work, basically, I started working. And then that actually built up more connections within the community for me so that I saw and met new people every day.
So was
So with that,
was that you? Like were you like I need to go get a job, or was your grandparents like you need to go? They're go apply. They're hiring.
no, I was like, I need to get a job because I need to make money, especially coming from a family that never came from money, right?
Yeah,
Like we didn't have much, and what I had, I was grateful for, but I always wanted more.
yeah.
And
Oh.
so the one way to get it was to work, and that's the way it started. But just like anything, sometimes greed gets the best of us.
Hmm.
And then I discovered more opportunities, especially hanging out with these other guys that were doing and selling drugs. And it all started off with weed. And I remember being a gas jockey, and I was selling joints, right, like at the gas station, just at work.
Really?
Yeah.
So you
like
come up, get $5 in gas, and what's up
Yeah.
or what?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, you would come to me.
I did that at Subway
Yeah.
when I was
Yeah.
16. Yeah.
Yeah. So you know how it is then.
Yeah.
And like I thought at the time that it was a genius idea, right? But I didn't realize all the hardships that would come with it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
people say that like everybody starts somewhere and like the seed was planted, and I think that's where for me it was, especially as the fast money type of life, right?
So was the reserve pretty big?
So there's about 2,500 people there. So it's a decent sized community from there. I don't know how many exactly that live there. Like there might be like 1,500, 2,000, in that area, but it was a pretty decent sized reserve, right?
Yeah. And pretty heavy gang presence.
Oh yeah, super big gang presence, especially with drugs and alcohol. Like tons of crystal meth, tons of coke, tons of weed. There's like an opioid crisis there as well. So they're definitely, and the scale of poverty, because people don't have much. Like, and the people that do are usually like, the chiefs and the counselors, and that's just a fact. and the people that have those government jobs, or that already have the education.
Yeah.
But there seems to be like this class that's stuck at like the same level of the struggle, right? And no matter what, they can't seem to go above that. But a lot of it has to do with mental health issues or drugs and alcohol.
Yeah. So how did your affiliation start? Were you at work, or how did you bump into these people?
So actually, one of my coworkers at the time, like I said before, I won't be saying any names. So one of my coworkers at the time he was a gang member of a long time gang that actually started out in PA. And he kind of like introduced me into, how much money he made off of doing the same thing. And, the fact that you're protected when you're with a gang, or, when you hang out with gang members, you don't necessarily have to be down with the gang to become a gangster, right?
Yeah.
And that's a big misconception that a lot of people have.
Yeah. So did they take you under their wing like right away, or did you have to prove yourself, or how did that go?
So with me, I didn't actually join a gang until a few years later, but the way that it started was that, I hung out with them, I partied with them. We worked together because, being in a gang is like a family business, right? But even though I wasn't in the gang, I was still involved. So, I mean, it could be, just kind of hanging out, on like a Friday night or the weekend type of thing, and just coming together.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and then you ended up getting the boot at a grandma and grandpa's house, hey?
Yeah. So basically, the nice way of saying it, was that they were old, right? And how hard it is to have a teenager, let alone a teenager that's already getting involved and mixed up with that kind of crowd, and developing those kind of relationships already that young. Because you got to remember, I was like 12 or 13, going out partying all night with these guys, coming home 2 days later, missing work, not showing up, getting fired from my job because these guys tell me to go do something, and I went and did it, and then I had to face the repercussion, right?
Yeah. So you went to Saskatoon. Who did you move in with when you went to the city?
Yeah, so when I moved in, I lived with my auntie, and then I lived with my other mom. So I have two moms, one that raised me and the one that gave birth to me. So I moved in with the one that raised me. And so basically what happened was we moved in, and we lived on Riversdale on 17th and Avenue I. And she still lives there, actually. So I moved there. Yeah. And, back then, before all the gentrification happened in like that area, the city, like it was bad. Like it was hood, Yeah.
So, you moved to Saskatoon. What high school did you go to?
So, initially I went to Mount Royal.
Yeah.
And, Mount Royal was a decent high school for me. It honestly, like, it depends on the crowd that you hang out with, right? Just like anything. And for me, it was, it started off like just trying to make new friends coming from, a northern community and coming into Saskatoon and being, a young Indigenous teenager in today's society. And for me, the crowd that I started to lean towards were the guys that, were involved in doing the same things as me, right?
Yeah.
And I already had that mindset. And, a big thing too has always been for me was the fact that I lived in poverty, right? The fact that you would go to school, or I would go to school, and there would be other kids with, in September with their new school clothes, new Jordans, new backpacks and things like that. But me and my family, we didn't have the money to afford all those things, right?
Yeah.
And like I didn't grow up like struggling to eat a meal every day, but like we never got to enjoy like the finer things. There was no such thing as like a vacation or anything like that. Like these things are just starting to become new to me now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And people are like, that's not normal. I'm like, well, I don't know what normal is, like, this is where I came from, and this is like part of my story. And, I don't tell people to feel bad for me, but it's more of like an explanation of why things went the way they did. Right. And for me to hang out with that crowd and to have that sense of young family, and like, we all had the same struggles, right? Like all us kids in the hood, we're all like coming from poverty. Right. So you just almost become like a product of your environment.
Yeah. So when you started going to school and started like getting into the community and stuff, did the gangs sort of seek you out, or did you go looking for them?
You know what? I honestly like went out and I look for that type of thing, right? Like I saw them around, and I like the way they were living, you know, like the young guys, they weren't like ballers or nothing like that, but they were making ends meet and nobody fucked with them.
Yeah.
So I thought, you know what, I want to be like that, because you can sell drugs somewhere in the city, but somebody might jack you, right? But gangsters barely ever get jacked. If they do, you know, there's repercussions.
Yeah.
And so for me, I was like, okay, well, let's go find, you know, the most gangster kids that come around the school, because, you know, gangsters, a lot of the young ones will just show up to school. They won't actually go to class. They'll hang out the smoker's pit and sell weed or whatever, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
So go ahead.
And yeah, those are the people that I kind of gravitated towards.
Did you ever feel like you were like, as things progressed for you, you started getting in heavier and stuff? Did you ever feel like what you were doing was wrong?
You know what? At the beginning, it was almost like a survival of the fittest type of thing. And, you know, it was almost like at first I felt like what I was doing was wrong, you know, but I never really like looked at the bigger picture. And at the time, like at the beginning, it always starts off small, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you just kind of like start off selling a bit of weed, selling some grams, maybe selling ounces, you know what I mean? Like you weren't like actually kicking in doors, robbing people, selling coke or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but as things progressed, the more involved you get into it, the more your remorse kind of just slips out of the way, right? Because it's becomes like it's normalized, right? Like you're doing it, all your friends are doing it. So why is this bad? You know?
Yeah, you don't really know nothing else.
Yeah, you don't. And like people are like, oh, why don't you go get a job? Why would I go get a job if I could sell?
I got a job.
Make money. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that was the mindset.
Don't be jealous of my job. So did you ever get arrested?
Oh man, I've been arrested numerous times. You know, like I almost lost count of how many times I've been arrested. But being arrested, and I've also been detained a lot. So I would say that between the two of both, it's been like well over 10 times, you know, because a lot of the times too, they would just detain me knowing who I was and that I had built a reputation, right? Mm-hmm. Like they would pick me walking down the street. You know, I'd be walking through Pleasant Hill or through Riversdale, Meadow Green, Appleby, and like gang unit or show cap or B cap or city police would just pull me over, right? But I looked like a gangster, you know, baggy pants, baggy shirt, sunglasses, hat backwards, bandana around my neck, or you know, hanging out of my pocket.
Mm-hmm. So just trying to be low key, then, hey?
Yeah, super low key.
Super low key. So what was your first serious charge then?
So my first serious charge actually happened in, when would that have been? It would have been 2013. So I was 15 years old, and this is kind of when I got like super involved. You know, this is a time in my life where I was like, all right, you got to make the big step. You do whatever it takes, and you have to prove yourself so people know you're serious, you know? Mm-hmm. They know you're not messing around. They know that like you're out there, and if you fuck with me, that it's kill or be killed. So when I was 15 years old, I got arrested for attempted murder and assault with a deadly weapon.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you go in for that? I
did. Yeah. I went in for 2 weeks, and I got out on bail because they thought I didn't do it.
Yeah. So so you were just in remand for 2 weeks.
Yeah. I was in remand for 2 weeks, and then they let me out on bail. And I was under a 24-hour house arrest when I got out on bail. Yeah. And you know me, obviously I thought what I did was like the right thing to do. And I thought like, yo, that guy deserved
Justified.
It. And he had it coming. That's what I thought at the time. And then I ended up, you know, well, I didn't learn anything. I just went back to doing the same thing, right?
Yeah.
So I went back on the street, and the first thing I did was go pick up another bag of dope and start hustling again.
So did you at least like wait the 24 hours, or did you just like peace out right away?
I like still went to school, but on the low, I would almost like just sneak out like for a few hours here and there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Didn't you say you were under house arrest for 24 hours after you got out?
Yeah. So when you're a young offender, they don't give you an ankle bracelet. They just give you a 24-hour curfew to your house that you reside in.
That doesn't like they just don't care then? They're just like, just you be good now. Like
pretty much. Yeah. They're like, all right, so here you go. Here's your conditions. Don't break any of these conditions. We know you're 15. We know it's going to be hard for you to like stay inside your house during like summer, but we're just going to like slam you with that condition.
Yeah.
And if you breach it, we're just going to throw you in jail anyway. So,
So did you stay the 24 hours?
no, I
No.
would break that curfew all the time. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
how are you going to limit my freedom to 24 hours a day when I'm 15 years old trying to live my life, you know?
Yeah.
Especially as a gangster and a free spirit. I
Yeah.
was like, nah, man, I ain't sitting in my house all day. I'm getting out of here and I'm going to go do things, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And, you know, I had to make money. How was I going to eat if I couldn't make no money? Right.
Right. Right. Oh yeah, I gotta work.
Yeah. Got to work.
Yeah.
It might
The man
not
ain't
be
gonna
like-
hold me down.
Yeah. And that's what I figured. You know what the crazy thing about that was?
No.
That I would have more than one time in a night, they would come curfew check me. There was some nights where I was sitting there in my house and like 9 p.m. all of a sudden, like city police would show up and they'd be banging on my door and I'd answer, oh, just checking if you're home, you know? Okay, we'll see you later. And then at 11:30, there would be like a gang unit. 2 of them show up banging on my door. Hey, what are you up to tonight? I'm like, oh, you guys just curfew. Oh, it doesn't say anything on my screen. And then like 3 a.m., a different unit from the city police, like a BCAP unit or whatever, would show up and be like, oh, hey, what are you up to? I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm still just like hanging out at my house. You know?
So I wonder, you know, the first thing that comes to my mind is why wouldn't they just put a bracelet on you? Like what? Like, do you know how much a house call costs for 2 officers to show up? Like,
No
they
idea.
probably. Well, I truthfully I don't either, but I could speculate that it's probably not that cheap.
Yeah.
You know.
No, I hear you.
Yeah.
Well, they also have a pretty big budget on that too, eh? So they.
Oh, don't get me started, and don't get the viewers started. Viewers, just we know, okay, we know, we're working on it. Okay, so what did you like? So you went in for 2 weeks, and you came out, and you started right back into it. Like, how long until things went south again?
Probably within like the next 2 weeks after that I was out. We had actually, not me personally, one of my guys had gotten robbed, and I was like, and they're like, oh, Mario Ahenakew, yeah, F that guy, like, fuck that guy.
So you got guys working for you at this point.
Like, not working for me, but like, I just had people around me, right?
Okay.
And so what happened, like, just being in that lifestyle, you always have people around you, right? Like buddies or whatever. And then one of them had gotten robbed. And so they were like, hey, Mario Ahenakew, fuck that guy. He ain't going to do anything, right?
Yeah.
So that day, me and some guys went and we dealt with it, right? Like, we kicked in their door. Of course, we bear maced them. And some other things happened. Allegedly, we had guns in the house, right?
Allegedly.
And so, allegedly,
Mhm.
quote unquote.
Mhm.
And so what ended up happening was the next day, the cops kicked in my door. And there was like 30 cop cars outside. Maybe I'm exaggerating. Maybe there was 10. Maybe there was 50. And all I remember is my whole block was hit up with blue and red. And I was like, what's going on here, you know? Because I didn't piece 2 and 2 together because these guys that had robbed me were supposed to be gangsters, right?
Yeah.
And like, number one rule of being a gangster, you never snitch.
Right.
And like, everybody knows this. Like, people on the street, you know this. Like, majority of people in life should know this.
Mhm.
Like, if you're in a gang, you keep your mouth shut and you don't say nothing to nobody, right?
Mhm.
And what ended up happening was they ended up ratting me out.
And okay, so when we were talking the other day, like, you went in there and you took their product and everything, right? Like, you
Yeah, we took
cleaned them out, and then they called out and they called the cops and said that you robbed them. Like, you robbed them.
They had called the cops on me and said like, hey, yeah, so and so, they robbed me and they bear maced my house and whatever, right?
Mhm.
And what ended up happening was the cops showed up the next morning. It was 7 a.m. before school. So you got to remember, I'm still 15 at this time, right? So I'm just a young kid. And the cops are banging on my door. And they're like, Mario Ahenakew, you're under arrest for, a home invasion with assault and, all these other little charges. And then they ended up, bringing me to jail. So 2 weeks later, I was in the same cell. And I remember the cops coming out to, like, they weren't even there to interview me. They were just there to, like, tell me. Basically, they were there, like, laughing at me, like, you're fucked now, buddy.
Mhm.
Like, you're arrested for attempted murder, assault with a weapon, home invasion with assault, And like, not to mention all the
So
rape charges that came with it.
a second attempted murder charge?
No, that was still like the
Okay.
first one. Yeah. So I
So
had
they
the one attempted.
they still weren't convinced that you didn't do the first one.
No, at that time they were like, still didn't really know, but they kind of like were starting to clue two and two together, you know?
Yeah.
So what ended up happening was, so with the attempted murder charge, like we should probably talk on that a little bit more. A guy was stabbed 10 times. And so at the time they didn't think it was a 15-year-old kid that did it.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, with that being said, after I did like this home invasion, whatever, and was arrested for that, then maybe they were like, oh, okay,
Became a little more tangible.
yeah. And then what ended up happening was I had, I was back in that cell, and those cops just came to me, and they just like, they weren't even there to interview me or ask me any questions. They basically told me how fucked I was. They're like, yeah, you're going to jail for like 5 to 7 years. And I was only 15, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like, this isn't just like some like, you know, like nice college jail. This is like actual like 4 walls, you know?
Yeah, we got a comment coming in here from Renee, and my setup is my camera is sort of in front of the bottom part of the chat, and Renee is saying something. She says, "You sure you weren't just trying to get McDonald's breakfast? Because if so, I'll hook you up, bro." Well, thanks, Renee. Good to see you there with Forum. So the cops are telling you that you're screwed. Then what?
So basically what ended up happening was that I was then remanded to Kilburn Hall. And so I was 15 years old, and I didn't know how much time that I was going to face. I knew that I had these like serious charges that could keep me in jail for 7 years of my life, right? Like I wouldn't be out till I was 22. So basically what ended up happening was they put me in a cell, and it had 4 walls. I had gray clothes, you know? They took all my old clothes. They gave me 3 books, 2 pencils, 1 eraser. And that was pretty much all I had in my cell. You know, it was just a desk on the side. It was a bed. And there was a little radio up in the corner that played C95 over and over again. And I ended up sitting in that cell for 13 months. You know, some days we would only get out 23 and a half hours a day, right? Or 23 hours a day. They'd let us out for an hour to shower and to do whatever. But you have to remember, I was remanded. So I sat on remand for 13 months. And so remand's basically what it is you're sitting there awaiting like a trial or a further court date. So for 13 months from the age of like 15 to like 16-ish, I didn't know what was going to happen with my life, right? Like I was almost in a limbo, but I was sitting in this cell, you know? And at that point in my life, I was still a gang member, and I was thinking like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know where my life is going to take me. And I actually had some people from Straight Up come and talk to us in there.
Yeah. So, I mean, what did you do in there all that time?
I went to school. I went to school for a bit. I read a lot of books because, like, what else do you do when all you have is books and no TV, right?
Yeah.
Eventually, they have what's called like a level system. So eventually, you can get out of your cell longer, which only like. Ultimately, you're locked up in a cell like at least for 18 hours a day, right? Like at the very like most. Like a lot of guys that are in there are locked up for like 22 hours every day, right? And for me, there was really nothing to do. Like I went to school, I got my grade 10, you know? The guard used to always laugh and be like, yo, you're like Ricky on Trailer Park Boys, you know? Like go back, get my grade 10. You know?
So did they let you out of your cell for that, or was that all like in the cell too?
It was like mixed up. Like you never knew, because like they could lock the jail down. You could be sitting in your cell for sometimes, you know, weeks at a time, and only get out for an hour and only see yourself. I always say that like the time that I did in a juvenile detention center was honestly like a harder time that I did anywhere else, because you're so young, right? Like I spent 6 years in the system, but at that point in your life, you're so young, and the guards are like, you know, they got like a bit of education, but maybe none of them have the life experience that I had, or had to, you know, hustle to buy themselves food or clothes, or to be in a gang to be protected and to have a feeling of family, you know? And for me, that created a lot of differences. Like there's a lot of great people in there. There's a lot of great guards in there, but at the end of the day, they weren't like me, right? Like look at even the indigenous population that are in jail, as opposed to how many of them are actually like guards, you know. And
Yeah.
for me, with the staff are always telling you what to do and how to live your life. You know, one of the things where we weren't even allowed to swear in jail. If you swore, you would get locked in your cell. So if you're 15 years old, you're a gangster in jail for attempted murder, like I was, and I couldn't even say fuck out loud, or I'd be locked in my cell for 23 hours. You know,
Wow.
tell me that ain't hard time.
Well, it doesn't make sense to me. I mean, that's just, hey, where's the service in that? Like, what?
Yeah, that's the system for you, though. You know.
Yeah. So at what point? Okay, so you said you started seeing Straight Up that was coming into Kilburn. What time did you? At what point did you?
So I should explain to the viewers what Straight Up is, then, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So Straight Up is a nonprofit organization here in Saskatoon that helps people like myself get out of gangs, or people to get out of the criminal lifestyle, right? And what they'll do a lot of the times is the members will actually go out and they'll speak in the community and talk to people about their life experience. Is kind of what I'm doing right now. I've done in front of, thousands of people at times in my life, because Straight Up gave me this opportunity to share my story and to have a voice with everybody, right? And so other ex-gangsters came to the jail and they told me, like, what's up and where this lifestyle goes. Like, if you want to be a gangster, you end up two places: jails or death, right? But being so young, you're so naive. If you were to tell me that right now, I would tell you that I don't believe you. But if an ex-gangster that lived that lifestyle, that came from the same background as me, came up and told me that, then I'd be like, oh, all right,
Yeah, the voice of lived experience is really invaluable.
Yeah, 100% it is, right?
So you met Father Andre from Straight Up. Tell us about that. What was that like?
I did. You know what? I can't say, enough about him. He's a great man. And he gave me an opportunity to have a voice and to share my story with him. Like, I wrote out my autobiography. Basically, one of the main conditions, the first step that you do when you join Straight Up, write out your autobiography, give it to him. And then he took me under his own wing, almost as a son, right? And basically told me hey, there's a new life out there. You can get out and not be a gang. And a lot of the times the biggest fear that I had about leaving the gang is what's going to happen when I leave, right? I was 16 at this time.
Yeah. Got a question coming in here. You know what? Okay, I'm going to take a second here. I have to move my camera. It's going to mess with everything. Oh, maybe not too bad. Oh, well, look at that. Okay, so Rose, good to see you tonight. Thanks for watching. She asks, is it possible that you only being 15 years old that made the reason you were locked up the majority of the day for your protection from older hardened prisoners?
Definitely not. You know what?
Yeah, Rose, you haven't seen Mario in real life. He's quite large.
Yeah. So right now I'm 6'6", 270.
Yeah.
But at that time, so I'm 6'6" right now. But at that time when I was 15, I was already 6'4", 6'3", 6'4", and I'd already built up a pretty big reputation. So the fact that I was locked up more was that because I was a known gang member and I had violent charges, so anyone that's a known gang member, anyone that's in there for violent offenses are locked up more, right? If you're just in jail for a possession charge, they're going to let you out more. But, that was actually a very fair question, though, because a lot of people don't realize these things, right?
Renee's got another question coming in here. Random dumb question. Oh, Renee. How do you enter a gang? Are there any acts to perform, and then how do you exit?
So there's basically, that's a super tough question, because every gang runs it differently, right? Some gangs you can join, you get a minute to get in, so they beat you up for a minute and then you're in. Other gangs, you could be a good time hustler, you could be a long-term friend, or you could be raised with these guys, grow up with them, and they just ask, right? Or that you have to do something to show that you're loyal and you're going to have that loyalty, right? So if they tell you to go do something, you can't be like, oh no, I don't want to do it because it's bad. It's all right, no questions asked, And so another way for a lot of guys to exit, some guys are beaten up, some guys, they get their head kicked in, some guys, they never make it out because they die, right? Somebody will kill you because, you've been in it so long that too much. right? And that's a big thing that happens, is that a lot of people have been in it so long they can't leave.
Yeah.
So at that time, I was only in the gang for 3 years, right?
Yeah.
But those 3 years was from being the age of 13 to 16. So they were pretty young ages, right? And yeah, so what ended up happening, and another big thing too, was that when you leave, it's like, well, what happens when I get back on the street, you know?
Yeah.
Or like, what happens because I have 10 other gang members in the same gang sitting on my range right now, right?
Yeah. So do you think that the time inside helped you?
I think that it like did, yes and no.
Mm-hmm.
Like for me, being so young and in jail, like that kind of like messes with somebody. Like if you think about it, like it's not really right for like a 13-year-old to be locked up for, 13 months straight on remand for a long time.
I don't know if that's good for anybody, man.
Yeah, like for real.
Yeah. I mean, look at the isolation that we faced even going through COVID. There was a lot of mental health challenges there. And, that's,
Yeah.
they were in their home. Imagine being in four walls with C95 all day.
Yeah, exactly. That was like hell. I know. And I hate the radio station now. And people ask me why. I'm like, you've never had to sit in a dark cell for 13 months listening to the same station, Like, it was either that or listen to nothing, right? So I was like, all right, I'll deal with it. But there was a time in my life where I was able to block it out and like read a book while listening to the radio.
So could you turn it off? Like you couldn't turn it off?
You could from the outside, yeah. But if you're locked up for the night, you couldn't.
They would leave it on all night too.
Yeah, you could, yeah. I would rather listen to it than listen to nothing though.
Oh, interesting.
It all depends on how my life was doing. But there was another thing too, is that, you know what, if you didn't get up in the morning, they would actually like if you didn't get up, do your chores, because they gave you like assigned chores. You didn't get up, do your assigned chores, or if you didn't go to school, they have like outside lights they can turn on. So they basically turn the light on from the outside and they leave you in there. And you have to have your bed like perfectly folded too, right? And so basically what they would do, they would turn your light on for you. And so you'd be sitting in your cell if you didn't want to go to class, and you already due in time. But if you didn't want to go to class, you would have to be in your cell all day too. They would lock you up all day. So you'd sit in there all day, and they would just turn your light on all day.
So, when you got out, you were 17 when you got out, right?
Yeah. So when I was 17, I ended up pleading guilty to aggravated assault and for the home invasion, because I was already guilty. I was sick of, just like procrastinating, not knowing when I was getting out. At this time in my life, I was like, you know what? I just want to know when I'm going to get out. Like, I'm guilty, like I did this, I did the crime, like this old saying, if you do the crime, do the time, right?
Yeah.
And for me to get out of the gang too, and a big thing for me is like a lot of those people when I was in jail, like almost forgot about me, after I did all the things that I did. So I was kind of like, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to plead guilty to all of it because I'm already like, I'm as guilty as it gets. So I figured like, there's no use fighting something I did if, I'm going to get found guilty, or if my friends are going to get accused of it anyway. Right.
Yeah.
It's like a lot of those guys that were involved, they're still my friends today because, I was like, all right, I did it,
Yeah.
Enough said.
Yeah.
I didn't throw anyone under the bus. I didn't rat nobody out. I just accepted it and said, yeah, there's me. That's it. I'll do the time. And so I ended up getting sentenced 3 years, and I did 2 of those years. So from 15 to 17, I was locked up, and then they let me out at the age of 17.
How was it getting out? Like, was it like a happy day for you to get out, or were you scared to face the world? How did that go for you?
You know what? I was just so happy, at this point in my life, because being so young and being incarcerated so young, it was almost like I never really got to appreciate my life or do anything or see anything, right? Because like I was a kid in jail and I didn't have those opportunities that a lot of people have. Like a lot of the guys that I had went to school with prior that were like quote unquote the good kids in class, they had already graduated, had their grad parties and everything, while I was sitting in a cell,
Yeah.
And like if that ain't hell, I don't know what is. It was
yeah,
tough.
man. Yeah, I've never. I mean, I've spent overnight in cells, but yeah, I've never done any hard time like that.
Yeah.
So what did you do? Like, what did you do when you got out?
So when I got out, like the first thing I wanted to do was find schooling, right?
Yeah.
And I ended up moving in with my biological mom. And you know what? I thought like Oh yeah, I'm all caught up with like my schooling still, like pretty close. You know, like I had my grade 10, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought like, oh, I could just go to like a mainstream school. I left my gang. I'm not a gang member anymore. I'm still on conditions though. They still gave me a year of conditions. So I ended up trying to find a school. And I had applied to every school in the city of Saskatoon, and no school accepted me. Not even the school that took bad kids would accept me because of my past history. Like, how does that work? You know, and I always had good grades in class. But the problem for me was that I never stayed in school because it didn't make sense for me to be in school if I could be out there making money, right?
Uh-huh.
Like, how would school benefit me if I was a drug dealer? You know,
Yeah.
if I'm a gangster and a hustler, why would I need to go to school? And that was my attitude. And for me, I knew more than the teachers knew because those teachers weren't street smart and they didn't know the everyday struggles that I had to face, right?
Yeah. So you finally end up in Holy Cross.
Before that, they sent me to a satellite program.
Open door program.
Yeah.
Yep, sorry.
Opening doors program.
Open.
So that
Okay,
was a good school. That was a good school. That was like the school where like the super bad kids that had like poor attendance problems or like were coming out of jails or whatever, right?
The school where the bad kids went when they couldn't get into the bad kids school.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it was. So there was like 15, 20 of us.
Yeah.
But then I did really well, you know, like I averaged like high 80s. And then Holy Cross after a semester was like, all right, we'll take you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And it went really well at first, right? Like I had my first semester at Holy Cross, like I was doing good. I was super active with the sports community. I was super active in schooling. Like I would show up every day. Like I lived like 3 blocks away from school, and I would show up. And what ended up happening was I had won an award like with the SaskTel Youth Awards for Indigenous. I can't remember what it's called again, but I won awards and stuff like that. But the problem with me has always been money, right? Because like not coming from any and not having any. And I had already found this way how to make so much money without actually needing a job, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where things started to turn back south, you know, was that I
So-
wasn't a gang member anymore,
Right.
you know, but I still had that gangster mindset and mentality up here.
So what did you do?
So what I did was I went back to doing what I knew most. You know, I started selling drugs. And at that time in my life, I'd already built up a reputation and clientele that I thought, okay, now we got to move it on up a little bit and sell, you know, drugs that, you know, more people are interested in that are going to make me more money, right?
Yeah.
And whenever you're trapped up in that lifestyle, negative things happen in your life.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So up until this point, you really hadn't used much.
No.
So how did that happen?
anything.
How did that come
So-
around?
So at that time in my life, I barely did anything. Like I was, you know, smoking a bit of weed and whatever. I you know, I would party the odd night. I would drink the odd night. But I had always been told this mentality that like a good drug dealer never gets high on his own supply. And for me, that made the most sense. But it wasn't until I was like, 17, almost 18, where I was just like, hey, you know what? I think I want to go out and party more. Because there was a lot of pressure, right? It's like having a business, you know?
Yeah.
And there was like a ton of pressure on my shoulders. And there was also all of the, you know, the bad things that I was doing. Like I was walking in a home selling, you know, a mother drugs that had 3 kids, and they were running around with no diapers and no food in the fridge, but they were spending their welfare check on dope, you know?
Mm-hmm. How did that feel? Like, did you feel something at the time, or were you just like business as usual?
At that time, I that's where my eyes were like, whoa. Like,
Yeah.
I felt like that sense of guilt, you know, and like remorse.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's one thing for somebody to live in poverty. It's another thing to live, you know, like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, and at this point, you're driving around in nice cars and jewelry and watches and shit, right? Like, what was that?
Yeah.
What was that like?
Like I thought it was cool at the time, you know, like I was like super big, like egotistical in that sense. Like, oh, I had a nice car. Like I had like 5 cars, you know, we were talking before. I had like a Jaguar at 17, you know, I had like trucks. I had like so many gold chains, so many rings, you know, like all these materialistic things, like designer clothes, you know, you go into my room, I'd have like 40 pairs of brand new shoes, and I'd only ever wear like 2 or 3 of them. But I just had so much money, I was just throwing it out there, right? Because for then it became more of less of what I need and more for what I want. So I wanted that like super flashy look. Like I remember the cops coming knocking on my door, and they're like, "Oh, you got some nice vehicles and clothes, and like where are you getting all this money from?" And they like knew exactly what I was doing.
Yeah.
But I was like, "Oh, I just have like a rich uncle," you know?
Yeah.
And they didn't believe me. Yeah, they never did.
Well, they knew you already, though. They're like, well, you're doing pretty good. Hey, we never heard about this uncle before.
yeah, no doubt. So yeah, but with that lifestyle, just becomes like using becomes normal after a while, right?
Yeah.
Like you already have all the product there, so why wouldn't you do it? And for me, it like started off like, oh, let's just do it on the weekends, you know, still show up to school. Like it's not a problem. Like I can contain this, I can control this. And next thing you know, I started getting high like every day. And for me, it wasn't just like when I was out of school, it was during school. Like I would go to class, I would be in class, in the bathroom stall, doing a line of fentanyl off my phone and going back to class and telling them I think I'm sick with the flu because my face looked green and pale and I was like puking, right?
Yeah.
And for me, that was, you know, it was just a good way to get out of school. And like, at that time in my life, it almost became like a part where I didn't care about anything, you know, like I already had money, you know, I'm like, what else do I need? And I started pushing away like all my family, right? Because my family were coming up to me like in solid concern and telling me, Mario, you're an addict, you have a problem. But I didn't see that as an individual that I had a problem. Like I thought like, oh no, my life's good, look at all this money I made, and pull out like 10 grand in cash.
Yeah.
You know, like you look at your life, you know, you're broke. Why are you telling me that I have a problem with drugs?
So you're doing all this business, and you're driving these like nice cars and all of these materialistic things, and you're still managing to go to school every day.
Yeah, it was a lot of weight and a lot of stress on my shoulders, but I was doing it. But even the teachers started to realize like how much my life was starting to decline, like even in school, right? Because I would show up late. I started missing classes. I wouldn't show up a day here. I wouldn't show up a day there. I wasn't in gym class, you know? And I started to like build that barrier because I was living 2 different lives, right? Like I was trying to go to school and be like a responsible, productive, you know, member of society, but I was also trying to be like a gangster, no longer in a gang, but like still hustling, trying to make money.
Yeah.
And what ended up happening was, you know, I started like, I honestly like became like almost a full-on junkie, you know? Like I wasn't shooting up needles, but I was doing drugs. I was high every second and I couldn't stop. I couldn't say no because my body became like so climatized to having this amount of drugs. And it wasn't just like a small amount of drugs. Like I'm talking, it was like we were doing like a half ounce of cocaine with like me and 2 of my buddies in a night, or we were doing like 15 fentanyl pills by myself in a day, or morphine, and we're talking like morphine 30s, like 10 of them back to back within hours apart, right? And like I had like a serious drug problem, and it almost like went 0 to 100, you know, because whenever I do something in life, I seem to just like go the extra mile, you know, like regardless of what it is. If it's being a gangster, if it's being a drug dealer, if it's being an addict, you know, like for me. And I like people would tell me I had a problem and being, nah, I don't have a problem. Like I'm good, man. You have a problem for telling me.
I got lots of drugs. There's no problem.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, we don't have a shortage. But then things started decreasing though, you know?
Yeah.
Because my productivity went down. I couldn't think straight. You ever watch Goodfellas? I remember watching it, and the guy's like getting followed by, you know, like thinking there's helicopters after him. Like that was me. I like got super paranoid and like suffered from PTSD that the cops are gonna kick in my door every like minute, you know? Like I had built-in scenarios in my head that like they were just gonna get me. And like that's a shitty way to live your life. Always in fear, like constantly living in fear every day.
So how did it all end?
So I was arrested for hanging out with a known gang member, and they had brought me to jail on a breach. And I had a court date to appear. And so I appeared at that court date, and it was after another, you know, like long bender like a long night, you know, of drinking and doing drugs. And I showed up to court, and I didn't think nothing of it. I was nodding out in the courthouse on opioids, and I'd actually taken a bunch of Xanax that night, and I'd mixed it with alcohol. But at the time, I didn't put 2 and 2 together. But if you do Xanax with alcohol, it'll black you out like instantly. And I went to court, and the judge said, like, this guy is high. The prosecutor said, this guy is high.
Like, just right out in court, just be like, you are loaded.
Yeah. And they called my mom up and was like, yeah, your son is your son messed up, or is he normally like this? My mom threw me right under the bus. And my mom straight up was like, no, you're fucked. Like,
nah, he's fucked.
Yeah, like, he needs to like go to treat. Like, she basically said, like, my son's an addict, has a problem, and he can't deal with it on his own and needs to go to like treatment, or he needs help, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what the court system did? They adjourned the court and they let me walk free.
Like, with just like, okay, just we'll believe that you're gonna go to treatment type thing.
No, not even that. They were just like, all right, we're just gonna adjourn this court for like 3 weeks. Go, get on, move on with your life. Like, get out of here. Like, there was no like treatment talk. There was no like bring you to custody, to jail, to maybe clean you up a bit. It was just like, all right, go. So I went home, and then I was sitting at home, and I was like, why am I at home? I should be doing drugs. And I was out of drugs. So I jumped in my car, and I started driving down the road. And before we do any of this, should we answer some questions maybe?
No, no. There's questions. Any questions or comments we'll look at in the viewer's voice.
Okay. So
We'll get them. Yeah.
So anyway, with that being said, I left because I needed drugs. So I left my house. I jumped in my vehicle, and I was super intoxicated and so messed up from these drugs, I barely even could function. And I just remember driving along Circle Drive here in Saskatoon, and I was texting and driving, and I was on my phone just changing a song like I would like this. And I was changing a song on my phone to listen to in my vehicle. And I had looked up, and there was actually a telehandler in the road. And I tried to swerve around it, and I had hit the back tire. And I remember this just like it was yesterday. I hit the back tire, the airbags deployed. I went into the other lane. I couldn't stop. I was like super stunned because like I was going like 90 at this time, right? Like hitting a major, like basically a telehandler is a piece of heavy equipment. And I hit it, and I had been ricocheted into the other lane, and I got into a head-on collision. And I jumped out of the vehicle not knowing what happened. And I just like fainted in the middle of the road. So I just laid there. I laid there, and then the ambulance came. I remember there was vehicles driving by me, and like basically I just didn't know what was going on. Like, I knew I'd hit somebody, but I didn't know who it was. I didn't know what kind of vehicle it was. I barely even knew where I was because I was so messed up, right? And what ended up happening was the paramedics came, all the first responders, the tow truck guy. It was a tow truck guy that came from across the street to see if I was okay. And there was people there that sat with me in the middle of the highway as I laid there because I couldn't move. And I don't know. I still to this day don't know what happened. I was just like tensed up from the shock, and I laid there. And then they brought me to the hospital. And I sat there like all evening, whatever, in the hospital bed finally until I regained some sort of consciousness. And then finally I was sitting there, and the nurses were there, and I asked them what happened to the people in the other vehicle. And they kept saying, I don't know, why don't you ask the police? Like in a super like ignorant way. And I didn't think anything of it. You know, I just wanted to go home and go get high because I was like so messed up, right? And I was like already off drugs for that was the longest time, like 6 hours I was in there or whatever. I barely even remember. But they had brought me like, oh, here's the doors now. Some police just want to talk to you first, and then get a statement or whatever, and then you'll be free to go. And that's what like the nurses and everyone said. And I was like, oh, right on. And my family was there, whatever. They were outside the hospital waiting for me. And then this police officer comes up to me, and I'll never forget this day because he told me, he said, Mario Ahenakew, you're under arrest for dangerous driving causing death and impaired driving causing death. So my actions had resulted in taking the life of a 7-year-old man that day, just an innocent guy driving down the road in his vehicle. And that's where my life really, like, I knew that I like fucked up. And my family was out there, they were crying, you know, and these are the people that I had pushed away and told that I didn't have a problem or anything. And I had made this huge mistake that I'll never be able to take back. And, you know, we cried together. And then the cops, they took me down to the police station and they just told me what happened. And I was obviously guilty, you know, and there was nothing I could say to tell them I wasn't guilty because all the proof was there.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I ended up going back to the same cell that I had just done 2 years in, rethinking my whole life. And this was the rock bottom of my life. I was back in the same cell. I had no drugs. I had no money. I had no nice vehicle. And I had just killed an innocent person. You know, not only that, the girlfriend at the time broke up with me. You know, none of my friends that I was hustling with or supporting or giving drugs to were there for me because they were still super fucked up and couldn't look after themselves. So it was me sitting in a dark, lonely cell, detoxing from drugs, knowing that I had killed this guy and knowing that I could never take it back.
And that changed your life.
And that's where I knew at that time that I had two options. You know, I could continue living the lifestyle I was living and end up, like the old saying goes, jails, institutions, or death. Or I could give up what I was doing and find a new way to live. You know what, the biggest thing about that was not only living for myself, but living for this other man's life that I took, you know? Like, why should two lives be wasted in this situation?
Gonna go into the turning point. So, what was it like?
So what ended up happening was, you know, I sat on remand for like 6 to 9 months. They had sent me to the correctional, and they still had me flagged as like a terror squad gangster, and they had sent me to a unit that wasn't for that gang, but it was a different gang. In terms of me accepting that I was still down with the gang. And I said, no, I'm not. I'm trying to change my life because I had agreed to go to an adult system. So they put me through a remand to the correctional. And yeah, they like set me up and put me in like a rival gang range. And at the time I didn't care. I told them, I was like, hey man, I ain't down with the gang anymore. I remember walking out to the yard and there was like 14 or 15 guys of this rival gang that like rivaled the people that I was down with. And they had, you know, they were all out there in the yard. And I went out there with two homemade prison shanks in the middle of the yard. And I went up to the leader. I said, hey, I ain't a gangster no more. I ain't down with nobody. But if you guys want to beef or you guys are plotting on me, then let's go, you know? And for me, it was a battle in there because it was the fact that I was no longer a gang member, but I was surrounded by a ton of gangsters. And that's where life got real for me. And, you know, I was making that transitional period in my life where I wanted to live that lifestyle. And so then I would get into fights, you know, people would call me out on it and they'd be like, hey, you used to be down with these guys, blah, blah, blah. What are you doing here? And I would get into fights, you know, like I remember there was times where guys rushed into my cell and they were trying to mess me up. And, you know, I would do whatever it took. Like if I had a book there. I remember one time I had like a huge dictionary book and this guy owed me money and he was trying to make me look like a little bitch. So I just ran up in his room and beat him with a huge book, you know?
Maybe we shouldn't have played the turning point yet.
No, we shouldn't have. No.
My bad.
But you know, but that was the reality. But that's the point though. Even in a turning point in life, when you're in jail, you still have these challenges and these difficulties where it's life or death decisions. You know what I mean? Like, even though I wasn't a gang member, I'm not trying to live that lifestyle, but I'm in a jail with guys that are like, you know, kill or be killed, you know? Mm-hmm. So you could be like a law-abiding citizen in there, but like if somebody's going to come and try to fight you, then you're going to have to fight them, you know? Mm-hmm. Like, you're not going to go run and tell the guards and they'll just be a rat and then, you know?
It gets worse for you, right?
yeah, so I don't know if during my time that it really did change that part of the lifestyle, because that was almost like an everyday thing. And then I ended up going to the pen. So I went to the pen, and you guys got to remember, I was only 18 at this time. So my car accident had happened 2 days before my 18th birthday. And so, yeah, I went to the pen, and then the same thing happened there. So now this time it was the gang that I was down with were the majority people in there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I just told them the same thing. I said, you know what? I'm in here for a car accident. I'm trying my best to do whatever it takes to change my life, you know?
Yeah.
And
So, how long were you in the pen for?
so I ended up doing 2 years. So they had given me 3 years,
Mm-hmm.
and I did 2 years in the pen. Yeah. So at the age of 18, I spent till I was just about 20.
So, did you change your thoughts when you were in the pen? Is that when the things changed for you, or was it when you got out?
I think a lot of it was when I was in the pen, because that's where I started to find out like my indigenous and my cultural aspect of my life.
Mm-hmm.
Like going to ceremonies and finding how that would heal me, finding different programs, and trying to build like a positive network and support systems. But I also went to school. I finished my grade 12 in there.
Okay. Hang on.
Yeah.
Why isn't it doing it?
Yeah.
There we go. There. This time for sure. Okay.
Okay. So take 2 is the turning point.
There we go. This was the one.
Yeah. So this time I changed. I went through struggles, but I overcame them. Times were tough. I was surrounded by gangsters.
Mm-hmm.
I was facing difficulties.
You persevered.
Drugs. I persevered.
Mm-hmm.
I stayed strong through my journey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but in reality of it though,
Smart ass.
no, but it's true. It's so much harder to change in there because you're surrounded by gangsters. But they actually in the pen they have like a cultural program called Pathways where it helps people heal and to get out of that lifestyle and help them be connected with elders that are like the best counselors you'll ever have in your whole life. And then with the ceremonies and with the schooling on top. And that helped me during my time, and not only that, but going to the gym. But you have to remember when I got arrested, I was only, 150 pounds at 6'5".
That's crazy.
Yeah. Like now I have 120 pounds on that,
Mm-hmm.
like 150 pounds at 6'5". You can imagine how small I was.
Yeah.
So I also worked out every day. That was a big thing too for me to keep my mind straight. Right.
Yeah.
And at that time in my life, I knew I had a court date, and I knew I had a release date, and I knew when I was getting out, and that was a big difference.
So that brought you comfort then, right?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
Knowing that I'm gonna get out and when I'm gonna get out made the difference to me.
Gives you something,
yeah. Then I ended up getting out.
And what was that like?
Oh, it was great. I was at the halfway house. I had gotten a job like 2 weeks of me being out, and I had built a strong support system. Well, because when I got out, I had no friends. I just gave up all my old friends. Like they were still my friends, but I didn't hang out with them, right? Mm-hmm. And what ended up happening was I just worked every day. I got a job roofing, worked every day.
Yeah. And how was the halfway house?
Oh, it was good. It gave me, financial stability. It gave me, responsibility and discipline in my life.
Uh-huh. And so you found work right away? I think this is around the time that you and I met.
Yeah, so about 2 weeks after we met, I found work, yeah.
Yeah, because I remember like it was like 1 minute, oh, Mario's roofing, and then it's like 10 minutes later, it's like, oh, Mario owns a roofing company now.
Yeah. Yeah, so I worked for somebody for like the first summer, and then that winter I had actually got like an ironworking gig. Like across the country. So that's what I did all winter. And then I had saved up enough to start like my own subcontracting business. So I did that the next year. Mm-hmm. So working for me was like one of the biggest things, right? So that I didn't get involved in that lifestyle again. So I always had money, right? Because that's always the biggest struggle that I faced. But also changing up who I hung around, building a strong support system, having friends that encouraged me, wanted me to do better in life. and that weren't, you know, selling drugs and living that lifestyle.
Yeah.
And then I ran a subcontracting crew, and I was like, wow, I'm good at this, and I'm very personable, and like people like respect me, and I'm decent at what I do. So why don't I just start a legit business, you know? Because I've been doing business my whole life, but it's been a different kind of business, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, when last year I actually started my own roofing company.
Yeah. I remember I used to take pictures of your stickers all over town and send them to you because they were everywhere there for a while.
Yeah, everywhere.
So,
I bought like thousands of stickers and just gave them out to everyone.
Yeah.
And I told, and like people call me and whatever, and I told them, you know, like haters would call me and be like, hey, I saw your sticker on my business, and I'm like, it's a sticker, peel it off, it's gone, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's not my responsibility that I gave these stickers out and people put them up wherever, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, they're supposed to go on someone's bumper, not your business.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But they were everywhere, like you said.
They were everywhere, yeah.
They still are. I still see them, you know?
Yeah.
It got me a lot of clout, though. A lot of
Did
people recognize the name. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot. Yeah, and people called me for roofs, saw the sticker. Like, hey, yeah, I saw your sticker on the stop sign. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, I got you. Another person saw one at Tim Hortons drive-thru, and
that was me. Well, I was one of those people. Oh no, I didn't do that. No, I called you. I called you and said that you should buy me coffee for putting your stickers on Facebook.
Ah.
Yeah. That sounds more like me. Yeah.
I should do that. Yeah.
So on a serious note, though, like how have you dealt with the feelings around, you know, the man that lost his life in that accident? Does that come up a lot, or?
Yeah, it does. Less frequent than it used to, like, especially when I first started. Like, I was having like nightmares of like PTSD and like almost like a sense of overwhelming guilt.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, over time, once I started living like a good lifestyle and being like a productive member in today's society and really contributing, then, you know, that remorse kind of went down, and people even reached out to me and said like, you're doing so much more well than you were before, and like, I'm just grateful to see that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
awesome.
You know, I still think of it from time to time, but at the end of the day, I know there's nothing I can do other than try to live my best life.
Absolutely. All right, man. Well, that's all the questions I have for you. We are going to go into the viewer's voice and look at some comments.
All right.
Okay, what do we got here? We've got, oh man, Shiloh. I hope I'm saying your name right, Shiloh. Thanks for watching. Thanks for commenting. Shiloh says, so proud of you and the life you built. Chase's mom. You know Chase?
I know a lot of Chases, yeah.
Yeah, I know a couple Chases too. Tanner from Possibilities Recovery Center. Tanner, thank you for watching tonight, man. Tanner says, thanks for sharing your story with us, Mario. Question, does your necklace have significance?
You know what? It honestly doesn't. I just kind of wore it just because of the orange on it. And, you know, like, beadwork has been a part of our culture. But no, the orange, though, like, on like a non-joking matter, just for, you know, all the children that were in residential school. Just to spread that awareness and show my support. So I figured that it'd be the best thing. You know, I'd rather wear this than wear like a company shirt or anything, because, you know,
fair enough,
it's so unfortunate. Yeah.
Yeah. No, the only reason I laughed is because I was expecting a story. He's like, no, I just like it. It's nice.
I could make one up real quick, you know?
Yeah, probably.
This bear paw represents.
Yes. Say something like, yeah. Okay, so we've got Randine chiming in. Thanks for watching and commenting, Randine. Randine says, I love true life stories. I love hearing how far a person can come and turn his life around to become such a well-known and well-respected, hardworking man. I love you, my brother. Much respect. We've got Ricky chiming in. Proud of you, brother. And Rose saying, exactly. And I think, right on, Rose. We got you. Yeah. Okay, I think that might be all of them. is there anything that you would like to leave us with tonight, my friend?
You know what? The biggest thing that a lot of people had told me, and sometimes I need a reminder, you know, a lot of times we make mistakes in life, but those are the things that will really define who you become as an individual, is if you learn from those mistakes and you overcome them, right? And for me, it was always thinking positive. And if I saw positive, that positive things could happen no matter how far sideways my life had went. And I just never gave up, and I never gave up any hope. And I just continued to, you know, try to aspire to live a better life. And that's kind of what I still do today. But, you know, there's times in my life where I go through hardships and I think, like, can I really do this? Is it worth it? But, you know, you're worth it regardless of what you're going through. You know, you don't have to be an ex-gang member, an addict, you know, somebody that's been to jail to change your life around and to become a better you. Anyone as an individual can come out of themselves and, you know, make a difference, not only to themselves, for their families, for the people around them, and just for the world to become a better place, you know?
Awesome, man. Okay, Mario, we're going to let you get back to your evening. Thanks so much for joining us tonight.
All right,
and take care, my man.
Yeah, peace and love, guys.
Later. Gonna go to the call to action. Okay. So, fostering change is our primary purpose here at Hard Knocks Talks. If you would like to contribute to ending the stigma around emotional pain, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Like and comment your thoughts on our posts. Let us come together with our lived experience as a resource that has the power to engage new thought processes, to promote new ideas, to broaden the spectrum of care, and to show the world that the lie is dead. We do recover, and we're here to show you how. Good night.